What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Robot Panda 15 here, bringing you another YouTube video talking about Battlefield 1 again, and just some general thoughts, issues I have with the game. I uploaded a class video earlier talking more in depth about the classes and all that. This one I figured I'm going to talk more on just some general issues I have with the game. This one's going to be more of a downer kind of video, I guess you could say. But we're going to start off with something that a lot of people have been having a lot of issues with, and that's getting to the menu, or getting to the options menu once you're actually in a game. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with how long it takes for the menu to actually pop up on console. It might be different on PC. I'm playing strictly on PS4 right now, and I'm noticing that it is really, really laggy. You hit that options button and it takes forever to do anything. Another issue I've noticed is once you've completed a game, it'll actually load the next game right away before actually bringing you to the scoreboard. So you're actually losing about 2 minutes, two to 2.5 minutes of gameplay, simply because the game's already loaded and started while you guys are all looking at the menu. And some people are actually getting around that, and they're being able to spawn in to the game and actually do that game while everyone else is stuck in the menu. So that's something they really need to look at. I don't know how that got into the beta build. That should have been something that DICE had been seeing constantly. This game's 2 months out from release. I mean, come on, guys. Another couple issues I've been having, such as when I fly jets, or when I fly the aircraft and stuff, is that I can't really know when my weapons are fully reloaded and stuff. There needs to be more of an audio cue. Like when you're using the bomber killer package and the fighter, there's really not much of an audio cue there to understand when your weapon is, or when the rockets are fully reloaded on that. There's a couple other weapons that are kind of like that. Just information in general, like the deploy screen. So a lot of you guys know there's a way to get to the deploy screen faster. Unfortunately, once you're at that deploy screen and you hit X and you select where you want to spawn in, right? Well, if you select where you want to spawn in, it won't spawn you in right away if you've used that speed up timer to get to the deploy screen, because it's still actually giving you a set deploy time. So one thing I would like to see differently is an indication of the time you have until you are deployed. Battlefield 4 did this. I believe Battlefield Hardline did this. You'd hit X and you get a little countdown timer for how long it would be until you actually deployed. Aside from that, there's really not a whole lot wrong with the game, aside from what I mentioned in the classes video. There's some issues with lag when you deploy, such as when you select a vehicle or an aircraft to deploy into. It takes a while for it to actually register it through, load it in, and deploy it. That's something I've been noticing. A few other things here and there that, of course, will be fixed by the time the game launches, hopefully. If they do go unnoticed, I'll probably hop on the forums right away and talk about them once the game launches. You will see me streaming this a lot once this game releases. I'll do a lot of streaming for it. But aside from all that, there's not really a whole lot that I have issues with this game. I really like what they're doing with it. The World War I take on it is really nice. Rush is something that I'm a little iffy on. They lowered the player count on Rush to 24 players. Rush has particularly been around the 32 player kind of area. On PS3 and Xbox 360 for Battlefield 4, Rush was 24 player. I like 32 player Rush a lot more than I like 24 player Rush. Having those 4 extra people on each team really, really makes it a lot more action-packed in Rush. But right now, especially on the current map that they have for Rush, it seems to fit pretty decently, the 24 players. Maybe they were structuring for the 24-player Rush instead of 32 players, so they changed up the maps a little bit for Rush. But right now, I'm kind of iffy on it. We'll definitely have to play more maps in the future, and Rush veterans like myself will have to sit down and get on those forums and talk about the changes we would like to see to Rush on each and every single map. I'm definitely going to be doing a video about that kind of changes I want to see in each map, that kind of stuff. But aside from that, I really, really hope that they have a multitude of game modes for this, because right now, from a lot of the guys that have played the alpha builds, the closed alpha, closed beta builds, that kind of stuff, we've really only seen conquest from them. I believe they did a couple TDMs in one of the closed alpha builds, but right now all we've seen is Conquest, and we're getting some Rush finally in here 2 months out from the game's launch. So I'm a little iffy on how many modes we'll actually have. I really hope we have a variety of modes like we had in Battlefield 4. Not too many, but I would love to see basic core modes being Conquest, Rush, Domination, TDM, and I would actually really like to see Obliteration. Obliteration would be awesome to have, especially squad obliteration. And air supremacy would be or air superiority would be really fun to have for modes in Battlefield 1. Just some general thoughts on that, some ideas that I'm bouncing around in my head. There's a couple more things I would love to see in this game, but those will probably be DLC. Right now, I'm going to touch a little bit on vehicles. The vehicles in the game, they seem very, very powerful if you know what you're doing with them. Tanks, on the other hand, one guy in a tank, I believe, I did a round where I went freaking, 30, I went on a 30 kill streak in the heavy tank before I accidentally pushed it up way too far and got fragged and got it killed from another heavy tank and some infantry that were dogpiling it. So tanks can be quite a powerhouse as long as you have infantry support. As you guys know, the assault class has kind of close range AT weapons, so they have to get up close to those tanks if they want to take them out. Now, getting up close to that tank, you can do it if the tank's alone, which we saw that a lot in Battlefield 4, Battlefield 3, all the past Battlefield games. Tanks have been kind of on their own a little bit. The tanks like to play solo sometimes, but in Battlefield 1, you're not going to see that a whole lot. You're going to want your tanks to be close to your infantry at all times, and it's good that you can spawn on any tank, aside from the light tank, which only has one slot you can spawn in. I think the artillery tank has one slot you can spawn in as well. The light tank is a one-person tank, but all the other tanks are like 4 or 5 people, so you should not have an issue spawning in those. And because you can spawn in those, it means your infantry is actually protecting your armor the way it should be. That's how you stop people from running up on those tanks and dogpiling them. The minute you get a tank isolated, you're going to have lots of assault players dogpiling them. I'm talking when the full game releases. Right now, tanks are running amok and they're super overpowered right now. That's because people don't really understand how to play against them. But once people understand how to play against them, you're going to see people being able to cut down the infantry around the tank and then kill the tank. You're going to see the medics kind of at a distance cutting down some of the infantry around the tank so the assault guys can get up close, get those anti-tank grenades and dynamite off on the tank to kill it. It is a team effort. It really is, but once it actually works and once you see it work, you'll be amazed by how awesome of a concept it is. The way they built the tanks is amazing. As far as aircraft goes, I really, really like how they structured the aircraft. So you have bombers, attackers, and fighters. Bombers are going to be really heavily used against armor. They're also going to be really heavily used against flags where you do have a lot of enemies on them. You're going to see a lot of bombers do runs over that. I feel like the bomber more closely represents the attack choppers in past Battlefield games. It's really slow. You have a front gunner that can do a lot of damage, but you also have a rear gunner. And in my experience, I'm more of an air superiority kind of guy when I fly aircraft. I prefer flying the fighter, and I prefer taking down bombers, taking down attackers, taking down other fighters. I think in an optimal situation that a good rear gunner in a bomber will cut down every single fighter that tries to take down that bomber, unless they're coming at an angle that the rear seat gunner cannot deal with. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with if you have a good rear seat gunner and if you're communicating with them. And you're definitely, I think the meta will be for Conquest at least, you're going to always see a bomber on the map for Conquest. The bomber is such a good tool to have to be able to deal with enemy armor. If your team needs to run more medics, needs to run more support, need to run more scouts, then you can have a bomber there to help supplement those classes. And because you're going to have a bomber, which is a force multiplier against the tanks, you're going to want, on the other side, fighters that can take down those bombers. Now, how are you going to protect that bomber? The best way to protect it, aside from the rear seat gunner on the bomber, because there will be times where he will get overwhelmed, you want fighters. So I feel like a good balance would actually be 1 bomber, 2 fighters. I'm not a big fan of the attacker, although I do have some clips, not in this video, but I do have some clips saved up of me using the bomber hunter setup on the attack plane and shooting down aircraft with it. That thing's so much fun. It's basically a giant tank cannon that you put on the aircraft. It's really cool. But aside from that, I don't really find the attacker all that useful. It's slower than the fighter, and it will get cut down by the fighter every single time. Although they do have a rear seat gunner, I don't find them that useful. I prefer to either have a bomber or a fighter, one of the two. But you're definitely going to see fighters countering the bombers. You're going to see bombers countering the ground forces. So you have a rock, paper, scissors mentality right there, which is really nice to have. I really like that they have that in the game. It's so cool. Aside from that, there's some other minor stuff in the game that I'm kind of taking a fancy to. I'm not a big fan of dynamic weather. Some of it's kind of cool. The sandstorm, I'm pretty sure we've had enough of the sandstorms. Those of you guys that were veterans of Gulf of Oman 2016 or 2015 in Battlefield 4 know what I'm talking about when I say that the sandstorms can just GTFO. I like the dust storm though. The lighter dust storm's nice. But the sandstorm, no. That's just stupid. That should not be part of the game. But if you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like down below, subscribe for more content, and always leave a comment. I try to read any all comments that I possibly can, and I try to reply to as many as I possibly can as well. Either way, Panda, checking out.
Tonight I'm gonna show what you've been missing. I'm sorry I don't pay you no attention. Tonight I'ma show you off. Tonight I'ma show you off.